Okay, so the last example we're going to work in this section is calculating boundary values, midpoints, and class widths for a particular class. And this is from the homework sections number 6 and number 7. They should appear on page 51 of your book. So number 6 and number 7, it says find the class boundaries, midpoints, and widths for each class. And number 6 has the following class listed: 125 to 131. So these are class limits. And so what we want to do is find boundary values, midpoints, and class width. So the first thing that I tend to do when I do this type of problem is I try to think, what would the next class be? So if I looked at this, the next class would start at 132 on class limits, and there's a distance, a length of 6 between these things. So if I add 6, this is going to go to 138. So that's my next class. Now once I have that, it helps me think about what are for this given class that they gave me, I want to be able to find the boundary values, the midpoint, and the class width. So the boundary values, we're going to take the lower class limit of the next class up minus the upper class limit and divide by 2. So that's 1/2 or 0.5. And that's what we're going to add and subtract to the lower limit and the upper limit for this class. So I'm going to go, here's the boundaries. It's going to be 124.5 to 131.5. So those are the boundaries. Now we're going to do the midpoint. The midpoint we haven't talked about before, but the midpoint is basically you add the two class limits, sorry. So we're going to go 125 plus 131, and we're going to divide by 2. We're basically finding the average of these two values. You can do it with either the class limits or the class boundaries. You're going to get the same result either way. I tend to use the class limits because there's less decimal points. So 125 plus 131 is 256. Divided by 2 is 128. All right, so that's our midpoint. And again, it should land right in the middle of the set. And then the class width. Now remember, the class width is the distance between the two lower limits. So that's going to be 132 minus 125. And that's 7. So our class width is 7. When we find it this way, we're not taking the range divided by the number of classes. We're just looking at the distance between the lower limits of the two consecutive classes. All right, so let's do this again with a more complicated problem. Number 7. So number 7 says the class is 16.35 to 18.46. So here's where this is harder is with the decimal points. So the next class up should start at 18.47. We're just moving the last decimal place up one position. Now let's go find what's the length of this class. That length is 18.46 minus 16.35. So, there we go, 2.11. So the length of this class is the 18.46 minus the 16.35, and we get 2.11. So this next class, if I were to do it, I'd have to go, the upper boundary is going to be 18.47 plus that length, which is 2.11. So 18.47 plus 2.11 gives me 20.58. So now that's the length of those classes. next thing, so we haven't really found anything that they asked for yet. We're just kind of setting it up. So the first thing we want to find are boundaries. And boundaries is filling in that gap between the 1846 and the 1847. So we're going to go 18.47 minus 18.46, and we're going to divide that difference by 2. So let's go try that. So this is 0.01 divided by 2, which is 0.005. That's how much we want to subtract off the lower limit and add on to the upper limit. So the boundaries are going to be 16.35 minus 0.005. So the lower boundary is 16.35 minus 0.005. So that's 16.345. And the upper boundary is going to be the 18.46 plus the 0.005. So that's going to be 18.465. So let's write our boundaries. They don't lie vertically, they lie next to each other. So 16.345 to 18.465. Those are our boundaries. Now we're going to do midpoint. Midpoint is still, look at the limits, the class limits, add them together, 16.35 plus 18.46, and divide that sum by 2. So 16.35 plus 18.46, oops, try that again, 16.35 plus 18.46, that's 34.81, and we're dividing that by 2. So we get 17.405 is the midpoint. And now the width. The width is the distance between two consecutive lower limits, so that's 18.47 minus 16.35. If you hear that sound, that's my cat trying to get out of my bedroom. 16.35, we get 12 or 2.12. That's our width. Okay, so that finishes that example. And that should be enough, hopefully, for you to, between the notes and the examples, to try some problems. If you need any help,